Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are decoding what is essentially an ancient, genius-level blueprint for the human intellect. We're talking about the sacred iconography and the literal soundscapes, those sonic invocations associated with the goddess Saraswati. We're going to look at exactly how early thinkers managed to map out the very concept of a highly evolved mind.
Before we get into the weeds here, I want you to just pause and think about something for a second. How on earth do you visually represent the sum of all human knowledge? Seriously, think about it. It's a massive, completely abstract concept. We're talking about ultimate truth, human creativity, and the very mechanics of how we actually learn and understand the world around us. How do you condense the whole shebang into one single, comprehensive image?
Well, take a look at this absolute masterpiece of sacred iconography. Just take a moment to really soak in that majestic symmetry. Notice how it's perfectly divided into two complementary halves. Over on the left, you've got the tangible visual symbols, the sacred iconography itself. And then, right there on the right, we have the intangible. These are the invisible sonic tools, the sacred mantras and invocations. Put them together, and they form a completely unified system for understanding exactly how wisdom is built.
Moving into Section 1, Visualizing Divine Wisdom. You see, every single physical item the goddess is wearing, sitting on, or holding, it's not just there because it looks pretty, it's a highly specific ancient code. Let's start right at her foundation and her attire. Notice that pristine white lotus she's seated on and those flowing white garments? The color white here is a classic ancient allegory for absolute purity and supreme knowledge. But the real kicker is the lotus itself. It represents the transcendence of worldly ignorance. Basically, just as a lotus flower rises perfectly clean out of murky, muddy waters, this imagery is telling us that true knowledge allows our minds to rise straight above the everyday confusion and ignorance of the world. Now, what's really interesting about this next part is the stark contrast in what she's holding. In one hand, you've got the Veena. That's a traditional stringed instrument, and it represents all the creative arts, music, and intuitive, free-flowing expression. But look at the other hand. She holds a sacred book, representing the absolute bedrock of scientific, structured, and academic knowledge. It's quite literally the ultimate marriage of art and science. The message here is clear. To possess true wisdom according to this blueprint, you can't just be purely logical, and you can't just be purely creative. You have to perfectly balance the two. It's basically the ancient equivalent of bridging the gap between STEM and the humanities. And if you look right down at her feet, we find the White Swan, or the Hamsa. Now, this isn't just a graceful companion animal. In ancient myth, the Hamsa is said to possess this incredible, almost magical ability to drink only pure milk out of a mixture of milk and water. It's a brilliant metaphor for a very specific, highly advanced cognitive skill, discrimination. It's the ultimate intellectual filter. Think of it as our modern need to separate the signal from the noise. This profound ability is what allows a truly wise mind to lock on to everlasting truths rather than getting totally distracted by temporary fleeting illusions. Which brings us to Section 2, the sound of knowledge. So we've decoded the visual side of things, but in this tradition, knowledge isn't just something you see, it's something you experience and literally vibrate. Consider this beautifully simple phrase, Aim Saraswatyai Namah. This is what's known as a Bija Mantra. I want you to actually imagine the deep, echoing resonance of those words. A bija, or seed mantra, is a foundational sound. It's not just a sentence you read off a page, it's practically a sonic key that's been used for centuries to formally salute and tap into the goddess of wisdom. By vocalizing, or even just meditating on this exact foundational sound, seekers are trying to actively tune their own minds to the frequency of pure intellect, like tuning a radio dial to pick up a perfectly clear station. And that takes us into Section 3, Awakening the Mind. Moving beyond that initial foundational salute, we find some incredibly specific invocations designed for active mental enhancement. This ancient system brilliantly breaks the mind down into 3 divine gifts sought in the prayer for mental prowess. First up is Vidyam, which translates to knowledge. Think of this as the raw facts, the data and information we acquire every day. Next is Buddhim, which is wisdom. That's the deeper, more profound understanding of how to actually apply that raw knowledge correctly. And finally, we have Medham, which is intelligence, the sheer sharpness, speed, and agility of the intellect itself. It's honestly amazing how perfectly these ancient Sanskrit concepts map directly onto our very modern need for a discerning, agile, and well-rounded mind. Finally, we arrive at the Saraswati Vandana, This is a powerful, highly traditional hymn that serves as a closing invocation, and its purpose is absolutely striking. It describes the goddess as the ultimate force that removes the darkness of complete and total ignorance. It's not just about memorizing a few new facts. The ultimate goal of all this symbolism, all these mantras, is absolute mental liberation. It's about completely obliterating ignorance and replacing that darkness with the brilliant, undeniable light of divine wisdom. And that brings us to the end of our decoding session today. But as always, it leaves us with a really critical question to chew on. We've seen the blueprint, right? The perfect balance of art and science, the sharp discrimination of the swan, the power of those sonic keys, and that essential trio of knowledge, wisdom, and intelligence. So my question to you is, how are you going to cultivate your own Vidyam, Buddhim, and Medham today? How will you balance your creative and scientific mind to rise above all the transient noise out there? Thanks for joining me on this amazing journey through ancient knowledge right here on The Explainer. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep tuning your mind.